Hi, I'm Selina from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Cerece Rennie Murphy, who is a science fiction, a fantasy, and children's book writer. So she's written quite a few different types of books. And I'm going to ask you, Cerece, for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write? And what can readers expect from your newest book, which is a book of short stories, is coming out in April, I hear.
Yes, yes. Oh man, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Um,
Thanks
yeah,
for coming.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, Man, I think if what you can expect from almost all of my books is character driven but action packed stories. Um, but I really like to center the story around the characters, and they're leading you through this journey, whatever that journey is. And so hopefully, my goal is to always make you feel what they're feeling and be in their skin as they're going through these trials and tribulations. So even in the children's book, it's action packed, but you're following the main characters around and hopefully feeling that. So yeah, that's what you can expect from.
Great. And what do you think draws readers to these kinds of books?
Hopefully it's when each book, I mean, as a reader, I go into a story trying to follow the character, and then I end up finding out something about myself. And that process of discovering more about yourself as you discover more about the people around you, fictional or not. So I hope that's what draws me.
Oh, great. So, since your latest book is about short stories, it's a little hard for me to ask this question, but what was the inspiration for your newest book? For what is the title of your newest book again?
Oh yeah, it's called Between Two Seas.
Right, right.
Yes. And it's a collection of 4 short stories. And they all came from different places of inspiration. But I've noticed that in between my novels, I always write short stories. I guess it's my brain's way of resetting itself or something. But normally, so over the last couple of years, I've either written short stories or sort of collected the ideas they're noodling in my brain. And last year, I didn't quite feel ready to start the space opera that I'm working on, but these short stories just sort of came to me and I wanted to write them. And so I thought, oh, I could put a collection together. And they really, I mean, um, the first one, which is about a murderous fairy, was really inspired by a picture of this enormous tree that I believe is in South Carolina. They call it the mother tree. And I saw the picture and immediately just started thinking about the history that this tree has witnessed and what must that be like. And as soon as I did that, the sort of murderous fairy story kind of came to me. Um, let's see, the First Blood and Human were all came to me in a dream. First Blood 10 years ago, and I was so hesitant to write this story. Very loosely, it is a story about an enslaved woman, and an enslaved Black woman. And I, it's a very difficult subject. And when I first dreamt this story, I thought, I don't want to write this because I don't want to do the research and be depressed for like a year. Because in my mind, it was a book. And I was like, I don't know that I could be in this space for 500 pages and not sort of be on the floor. But as the story came back to me last year and I started thinking about how to do it as a short story. And the minute I sort of condensed it down to the essence, I was so thrilled to write it and excited. So that's that story. And then Human is about an alien that comes to Earth, and is able to change into human form and really loves her life and decides she wants to stay, even though she's not supposed to. And I dreamt it as a sci-fi Western on a train. And I'll never, it was at least 2, 3 years ago. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh, I'm gonna write a sci-fi Western. I was just so excited. But I was in the middle of, I guess I was starting The Wolf Queen, my fantasy series. So I couldn't write it. So I just sort of outlined it and just put it away. And um, so that's what that story is about. And then Blue Honey is a story about a father and son discovering a very powerful elixir on Earth. And the question is whether or not they should share it with the world. So that's Blue Honey, and I dreamt that about a year ago.
Oh, those all sound really interesting. Wow. I don't know how you could make those short stories because they all sound like they're like each one of them is novel length.
Oh, man, you know, I love the discipline of a short story. You have to focus. And I love that. Like, okay, this is only going to be 5 chapters, or this is only going to be, so I kind of love that. But a friend of mine who read it was like, oh, so Human really could be a trilogy. So when are you going to write that? Just like, I don't know.
Wow. So what were the steps that you took to bring it from initial inspiration to the finished book?
You know, a lot of research, because 3 of the 4 stories are historical, even if it's sort of fictional historical in some of them. So just researching the place, the history, you know, for the sci-fi Western, for Human, you know, like what kind of train, because it's sort of there's a chase on the train. So I had to figure out like, okay, where would they put the storage car and where's the dining car, and, you know, and all of that good stuff. So that was a lot of fun, but just delving into the history was where I started, so that I could get the lay of the land. I could get the environment, because I feel like sometimes it's hard to see a story. And when that happens to me, I realize I don't know enough about the world they're living in. That's why I'm having trouble seeing what it is they're seeing. And it never fails. The minute I go back and say, okay, let me dig deeper into what would this house look like? Or what is this neighborhood? Or what's happening in this country, depending on what I'm writing. The minute I plug into that, then it opens up and I can see what they see and I understand it. So that's usually where I start.
Interesting. So what is your favorite research story? And what cool facts and findings that you saw and didn't make it into the book, but you love discovering?
Oh man, for the Murderous Fairy story, which is called Feast of the Fifouillé, it was based on Louisiana lore about these creatures that lived in the swamps in Louisiana. And some people would say they were mermaids that would take you to like a different world where you would never return, and they were treasures. Other people believed they were these nefarious creatures that would feed you to their crocodile children. And that made it into the story. But the idea that it's specifically to the mythology is specific to Louisiana didn't make it into the story. And so I really enjoyed learning about that.
That is actual mythology for Louisiana.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really cool.
Interesting.
I stole it from a friend of mine. She mentioned it in a murder mystery series that's based in Louisiana, where she's from. And I was thinking about that story and the murders. I was like, oh, and then I read about the Fifouillé and I was like, that's it. And so I just, delved into that.
Wow. So what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out this book? And how did you overcome that challenge?
I think the biggest challenge, because I'd wrestled with the story so long, was First Blood, was the story about the enslaved young woman, because it's just such a painful history. And I typically, I think sometimes, too often, with stories that feature Black or African American characters, the stories are always sad, mad, or bad. And so I was going to say I make a conscious effort, but I don't know that it's conscious. A lot of my characters, though not all of my characters, are Black, if not African American. And I try to write from the experience that I have, which is of a very inspiring, a very triumphant story, not a sort of mad, bad, sad, downtrodden, oppressed story, um, which seems to be a lot of the focus of the African American and then the Black experience by extension. And so when I had the dream for First Blood, which I didn't know it was called that at the time, I was like, I don't like, there are amazing stories about this, but I don't know that I want to contribute to that. I think I'd rather just read it and learn about it. But so that was a struggle to get over that. But like I said, once I could see how I could focus on her journey and not the fact that she was an enslaved person, but I could focus on her journey as this dynamic woman who is both influencing and influenced by her environment. Then I found a way to tell a story of hope, to tell a story of courage and strength and overcoming and triumph within her environment. But that was a struggle to get past the, I don't personally want to tell another story about an enslaved Black person.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that. Wow. So what character did you love or hate the most when writing, and why?
Oh my gosh. I loved writing Stella Moonkind, who's the main character in Human, because I love her journey to discover who she is. She comes from a race of aliens that really the focus is not on the individual, it's on the collective. And when she comes to Earth and she inhabits the body that she does, she discovers individual desires and needs and wants. And it's something that's revolutionary to her in a lot of ways. And through that, she discovers, through this expression of being, which is humanness, she discovers herself. And that was something that was really exciting to write. You know, both as she takes on both the really good attributes of being human and the not so great attributes that are also sort of intrinsically a part of being human.
Interesting. Now, just a quick question: does she, when she becomes human, does she become a female Afro-American woman?
She does.
Oh, wow!
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. That's really fun to write.
Okay. And now, what else can we expect from you in the future?
Oh man. Okay. So I have the third book in the Ellis and the Magic Mirror children's book series that I
Okay.
started with our son. The third book is called Ellis in the Cloud Kingdom, and our son actually wrote the entire story, like the plot for the story, because we started when he was 6. So you can write a plot for a story. He had elements that he wanted, and with each book, he's just gotten more and more involved in not just the editing or the story concept, but actually plotting the story. So that's really exciting. And we finally finished illustration, so that should be coming out this summer. And then after that, I will be starting the space opera that I dreamt years and years ago. You're getting this theme, like my stories come to me. I always say, you know, in some ways, I feel like I'm more of a channeler than a writer, because the stories that I write come to me. I'm not sitting there like, oh, well, what would happen? I don't really make it up that way. They sort of tell me their story, and I try to write it down as best I can. But yes, so I'm working on a space opera.
That sounds great. Now, do your characters actually kind of tell you what is going to happen in the story?
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
They
that
do.
happens a lot.
I don't dance with them unless they're going to give up the game. Because, you know, when I started writing, our son was 3, and I would write from, you know, from a place of, let's just say, tired to deeply exhausted, you know, at the end of the day. And so at the end of the day, I can't be then sitting down and waiting for a muse or inspiration or wondering what's going to happen, because I'll just go to sleep. I won't have the brain ability to come up with that. So what I usually do when a story comes to me is I outline the whole thing first. I do a story outline and then I do a chapter outline. And it's not a detailed outline, but it's just sort of what happens in this chapter, what are the main points, and then what's the thing that makes you need to go to the next chapter. As a reader, I get the tension and the point of each chapter. And then from there, I sit down to write. So I have an outline. So when I'm tired at the end of the day, I'm not going, now what happens? I can look at my chapter outline and go, okay, today we are killing Anne. That's what we're doing today. And, I can write that down and that's it.
Okay, that's great. So now what's your favorite part of being a writer on writing and the whole publishing process?
Just having a story to tell. I get so excited after I do the outline process. What's great is that now all the sort of thinking is done. How's the magic gonna work? What's the, if there's superpowers or something. And now I'm the audience, because the magic is always not what happens, but how it happens. And that I don't know. I sit down and I open my mind, and then I start seeing Liam walking through the room, and I'm with him and I'm there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is how that happens, which I don't necessarily know how it happens. And that is so much fun. And it's, I write books primarily so I can read them, so I can see how the story ends and like really see how it ends. And so that's the cake and the cherry, really, for me, is being able to look at it at the end and be like, wow, see this journey. And then I get to share it, which is just insane.
So what do you think has been your greatest lesson in your journey so far?
It goes with the best piece of advice I've ever gotten about this journey as a writer, which is to believe in your story. And I continue to come back to that. Other people might not like it, other people may not get it, but I feel so deeply privileged that these characters are entrusting me with their story. I feel blessed. And to be a part of bringing that incredible story to the world, not because I wrote it, but because these characters are amazing. And I want to tell their story as best I can. And, if you pick up a book and you're like, it's me, it's not the characters. The characters are amazing. You know what I mean? And it's that. And so I believe in every story, every single story. I believe in these characters so much. And it's gotten me through doubt, rejection, any number of things. I might lose faith in me, but I never lose faith in the story or the characters.
Wow. What do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process, and how do you overcome that?
I think for most writers, it's the doubt that you're not good enough. And I still have that, though, I say my Kung Fu is really good. Like before, when I first started out, it was like a maze. The doubt was a maze. One day I sit down, it's, who do you think you are? You can't write this book. And then I'd get over that enough to write a page. And then tomorrow it's, oh, well, you wrote that page, but you can't write another page, and so it doesn't stay the same doubt. It changes, every day. And you have to get, I call it my Kung Fu. You have to get your Kung Fu together. So today you're like ready for it. You might need a kick today. You might need a karate chop tomorrow, but you have to get better at your doubt Kung Fu. And so now, I might sit down and say, okay, well, Cerece, you've written 8 books, but who says you can write the 9th? Like, you know what? Nobody. Shut up. I just write. And I no longer worry about, what if it's not the best? And what if I'm not good? Okay, you know what? I'm not Toni Morrison. There you have it. She's my favorite writer and just amazing. And she's a literary god, right? Okay, well, I'm not Toni Morrison. So now that's out the way. So now what do you got? Like, I just have to write. And so I think, but how you get better at fighting the doubt is you keep writing. And for me, I believe in something more important than me, which is the story and serving the story and remembering that ultimately it's not about me at all. It's about these characters. It's about this story. It's about whoever will read this story and be inspired, see themselves, whatever the life of the story is. That's the important thing. And it allows me to put my doubt aside, write the book.
Right. So what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Oh man, so many, so many. Going to conventions and meeting people and meeting the people who we have read my book and liked it and bought a friend. I mean, that's just like I said, that's just insane. That's all the insanity. You know what I mean? That's just beautiful and such a privilege. Oh man, other things. I remember meeting an an agent who, not an agent, she was an editor who worked with Octavia Butler and read one of my
Uh,
books and said, I think Octavia would have liked your book. It
oh,
was like one of, I mean, you know, that's just insane. You know, finding out that I'm somebody's favorite author, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. So there's been so many wonderful, getting to the end of each book. What a privilege, you know what I mean? I could go on and on and on. You know, seeing a
mm,
child holding one of my children's books and ask me when's the next one going to come out, or I read it with my mommy and they're so excited. They have a question. I'm just like, wow. Yeah, all of it just feels, it never gets old. Any of
mhm.
it, it never gets old.
Wow. So what piece of advice would you want to give to other writers?
Believe in your story.
Mm,
It's
yep.
not about you. It's about these characters who need you to bring their story to the world. You know, we've all read that book that has touched us, that has changed our lives, that has, you know, made us think of something in a different way. And it's hard to imagine that your book will ever be a book like that. But the truth is you have no idea what your story is meant to do. But you'll never find out unless you finish. And there is no magic to finishing a book. You write and you don't stop until you finish. That's how that goes. It's not magic. It's not anything else. It's, you know, I think as one writer put it, butt in a chair. That's what it is. So yeah.
Are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you'd recommend to other writers that might have helped you in your career?
Oh man, I'm kind of a hermit. So I don't belong to a lot of groups. What I would say is I have been a part of a writing group for over 5 or 6 years. We don't even know how long we've been together. It's been a long time. And we encourage each other. We meet every week and we talk about our writing goals. We talk about problems that we're having with our story or marketing or anything related to writing. And having that consistency and that accountability has been really helpful to me. So what I would say is find a group of people who you trust to be honest and you trust to be kind. Because there's a way to give constructive criticism without sort of destroying a person's, you know, self-esteem. So you want to be careful because I've heard so many writers go to groups that have just been destructive. But you want to find, and you don't need a big group. Maybe it's just the three of us. But just find that group of people who you trust to be honest and you trust to be kind and hold yourself accountable. Because these are the same folks. They know I'm working on the space opera. We're going to meet this Sunday and they're going to be like, so what's going on with the space opera? Have you done anything this week? I'm like, oh shoot, I better do something. And that can be really helpful.
Yeah, I guess I would assume that it gives you kind of a push to do something. Yeah.
You don't want to be, we start out with news. You better have some news. You know,
Great.
yeah.
I have some questions now about you as a person. What is the one thing that most people don't realize about you?
That I'm shy.
Really?
I'm really shy. I'm very much an introvert. Nobody believes that, but I am.
Okay. Wow. You don't seem it. Yeah.
I
Uh,
love I love meeting people and interacting, exchanging. Like what you asked, one of my favorite things. One of my favorite things to do is recommend other people's books. when I'm at a convention and I'll meet somebody, I'll say, what kind of books you read? And I'll tell them about myself. And they're like, that's not really what I read. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, I like such and such. And then I'll tell them like about some amazing book that I read. Because that's the easiest thing to do, is talk about somebody else's book. There's no, it's just pure joy. But so I do enjoy that exchange, but I get my energy from quiet. I'll go to a convention and literally not talk for 8 hours after that, like not make us.
And okay, what questions do you wish interviewers would ask you, and what would your answer be?
What's your favorite dessert? Nobody asks that enough because sugar is life. And I would say cookies. Right now, my favorite, my daughter makes these butterscotch cookies, butterscotch chip cookies that are just amazing. They're just amazing. And then if I'm not, well, I'm never not in the mood for a cookie, but if I'm switching it up, Baskin Robbins has a vegan chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream that I hope that everyone who's hearing this can get to. Yes, I do. So there you have it.
Okay, so what are your passions when you're not writing? How do you make time for your non-writing hobbies and things that you love?
Well, you can tell eating sugar is a hobby.
Yep.
It's a passion of mine. I love to take walks. I love to be out in the sun, just taking a walk. And I just insist on it. If I go for 3 days without moving in some way outdoors, you can always tell, like my mind is foggy, I'm a little grumpy, like I'm just not right if I don't go take a walk. So it's really sort of public service and mental health at the same time. Let's see. Other thing, I love to dance, and that's kind of hard to do, but I've been exploring that on YouTube. There are all these YouTube channels, like you take a little, like I took a Bollywood dancing like video and I was doing that with the kids. And it was fun. So and then I love to read, and I get that in any way I can. Maybe if it's just a page, I'm exhausted, it doesn't matter. When I was in grad school, I was reading all this other stuff, so I didn't have time for like creative reading, and I would devour magazines just to be able to say I read something. I would just devour magazines. So.
And what are some of your writing related hobbies, crafts, addictions?
Oh man, I still write longhand. Yes, and I'm obsessed. What is this? This is a micro. I used to need quiet when I started, but now I can write in noise. You got to do what you got to do basically to get the book out. But this is a Uniball micro pen. I'm obsessed with cheap, good pens. Because expensive pens, well, yeah, they should be able to write the book for you if it's $1,000. But a cheap, good pen is priceless. And I love these. So, yeah, and I buy notebooks for each book. So
okay, and that leads me on to my next question is, what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you while you're writing or editing?
Oh, man. Quiet is good, but I don't need it. I just need a pen and some paper.
Pen and paper.
Yeah.
Great. And you kind of answered this question already, but while you're writing, do you prefer music, silence, or what sort of thing do you need?
For writing, silence is best, although, like I said, I do what I got to do. But for editing, I will listen to like some like ocean sounds or piano, soft piano. That helps because sometimes you get lost in your mind with editing. You've been staring at that one paragraph that's just not working, and it's not working, but you can't figure out what it is. Listening to some music helps to keep my brain engaged as opposed to just kind of staring off into, yeah.
Okay, writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions to help them through their work. And do you have any? And what do you have? Do they help you or hinder you? Or oh yes.
And then they have another one that's perched on this. I think I'm going to get him out. Oh no, he's stuck. He's stuck well. There's another Yoda. So I have at least 3 Yodas on my desk. And then there's another one stuck to the lamp.
You don't
There
have
is no
any.
try, only do. That's right.
So you don't have actual living furry type of
I
things.
don't have living furry people.
Uh,
Not right now.
but Yodas are good.
Yes, yes. I had a
Helpful are they? How
I
helpful
yeah,
they are.
that's right. No, I had a live furry Yoda, but he passed. So
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Yeah, they definitely are very helpful.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yodas are helpful too. Um, and do you have any favorite foods? You kind of mentioned one, or drinks that must be in the vicinity, or must be avoided while you're writing or editing.
I don't do sodas in general. I like my sugar as dessert. I don't want to get it subconsciously. I want it all to be in a bowl. Be like, I am the sugar. You know what I mean? All of me.
You don't like to
I
drink
try,
your calories.
right. I want to concentrate. That's right. Um, I tried water. Just trying to keep my mind clear, or some tea. But I don't do caffeine. I don't do coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker. But yeah, some water, some tea is pretty much it.
Mm. And how important, if at all, is the New England setting been to your writing?
It's interesting. I went to grad school in Boston College.
Ah,
Yeah, for my school of social work. One of Jamaica Pond is featured in one of my first short stories.
interesting.
Yeah, it's a beautiful. I think the New England area and Boston in particular taught me to appreciate natural beauty. And that's featured in every single one of my books. I grew up in DC and never really appreciated public parks, until I was in Boston.
Hmm,
So
interesting.
yeah, and parks and outdoors is featured in, yeah, almost every one of my books for sure. So
Ah, great. Now I have two last questions for you. One is, and I'm going to give a little plug for Annie's here, but where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? Although they should definitely check here first.
yes, they should. I absolutely support your independent bookstores. They are championing authors and independent authors like me. So thank you so much. But you can also go to my website, where there's a link to indie books, where you can also, indie books are outbound books that also funnels into independent bookstores. So you can check there, but you can read excerpts of my books at CereceRennieMurphy.com. That's probably the place you should start if you're not already at Annie's, and if you want one.
Great. And Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, again, just to give a little plug, you can buy any of Cerece's books there, and you can order books orders at anniesbooksworcester.com. So you can send us email and look at our webpage, www.anniesbooksworcester.com. And you can call us at 508 796 5613 and also order books, and we do mail them to you. Okay, so that again, that ends my plug. And now next question is, how can we follow your work and your awesomeness?
Oh, thank you. Start at my website, www.CereceRennieMurphy.com. I have links to my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I don't post that often, but when I post, it's something that I care about. So
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This is a really wonderful interview. I really enjoyed speaking with you. And hopefully, if you ever get to the Boston area, then you can, hopefully come and when this pandemic is all over, you can come and visit us.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah,
Hands on those books.
it'd be
I love it.
wonderful.
And pick up some more, because I'm always reading. So
We have lots of books.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.